Okay, let me share my screen again. All right, so as I said, it's kind of light right now in terms of WordPress news and events. We just missed, unfortunately, I should put this on the Facebook page, Peter, but that they have their word sesh.
Yep.
Just happened last week for a couple of days.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to attend that, and unfortunately, they did record it, but you've got to pay for the recording, so they're not free. But that's one to search out for word sesh. They have some good speakers, but a fun one coming up this week. We're talking about WordPress 6, but
yeah.
Did you know WordPress on May 27th turns 19? It's almost old enough to drink. A couple of years away. So they've created a website for it. If you just search WordPress turns 19 or wp19.day, I know there is a .day domain, or search on social media that day for hashtag WP19day. So again, if you think about all the changes in WordPress in 19 years, and there's really a great article on WP Beginner. I don't know if I have the whole thing up, but there's a great article to keep up to date, talking about the history of WordPress since 2003. And what's fun to see, if you look at the screenshots of what WordPress looked like, just to see where it's come in that amount of time is pretty amazing. So I highly suggest, if you're new to WordPress, it's worth looking back on, I think, maybe to sometimes understand why things are the way that they are in WordPress. It has a really long history, and it's come quite a way in those 19 years. So happy birthday, WordPress.
There you go.
Tool or plugin spotlight. Let me stop my share. So Peter, what do you got for us this week?
I have this became very useful this week because I was testing a lot of things. So let me pull up the screen. You see build, launch, repeat?
Yep.
So there is a website out there called instawp.com. instawp.com. It is free at its base level. And with that free site, you can create 5 active WordPress sites. They only last 2 days. It's a 48-hour website that you can create. You can create up to 5 of these, but you can use these to completely test WordPress. Things that we're going to talk about tonight. You can try. I'll show you my account here. InstaWP. While I'm pulling this up, one thing that's also really nice is the ability to, if you're somebody who needs to show a lot of people, something we could even do at a paid amount, where you can set up templates and you can actually have somebody just go to a link and get an entire setup of like maybe a product you're demoing or something that you showed in a training session. So when you go to the site, it's just, to add a new site, you click add new, and then you say, I would like, what version. For example, if you want to test what's coming out tomorrow, you pick RC4, what PHP version, the default configuration. I'm not sure what other configuration, give it a name. And then when you create the site, it literally goes out and your new site is ready just that quick. And you can access it now. And it gives you, if you'd given it a name, you get a name. And here is a WordPress site that I can play with right now. It lasts 2 days. When it expires, you can even renew it just by clicking all for free out of the free thing. So InstaWP has been a lot of fun to use when testing all these different environments in a way that is just on this other server that will self-destruct in 48 hours.
That's great. That's really amazing. Yeah, I put the link to that in the chat for everyone. I saw something similar. I don't know if you saw it or not, Peter, but there was something in the WordPress newsletter about, I think it's for learn.wordpress.org. They were talking about something similar as they're doing training sessions to give people access to like a free environment. I don't know if it was this one or if it was.
I think it may be this one, because the templates are so easy to create. You basically set up a site up to a certain point and then you save it, and then now you can give people access to it.
Yeah.
There are a couple of other ones out there, but to me, this is the easiest, the fastest, the freest. Again, you're not going to launch a website on this. Although you can do things like you can move it if you can migrate something. If you practice somewhere and you want to move it, you can.
As far as you know, there's no restrictions on plugins or anything that you can install?
Not that I've found. If I come back to here, right? No server, blah, blah, blah. Inbuilt tools. Let's go under the pricing and see if there was any like, oh, you pay for it. I've loaded plugins with no problem whatsoever.
Okay,
So,
no, it's good to know. I mean, people can play around with it and see more. That's awesome. Great tool.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Cool. All right, thanks.
Yeah,
I like the fact you can actually switch WordPress versions pretty quickly. That's really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let me grab this. If you don't mind, stop sharing. Let me grab the screen back. All right, awesome. So let's jump into the meat of our presentation. Not that guy. Here we go. So WordPress 6.0, if people joined us in our meetup last month, we were just talking about this in the news, saying, hey, this is coming out. And then Peter and I talked and said, hey, great timing. we need a topic for May, and here we go. So it's perfect. It's coming. We'll talk a little bit more about in general, but just, I mean, to cut to the chase, it's coming out tomorrow. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means. So agenda for tonight, Peter and I will do some quick introductions of ourselves. We'll spend some time briefly talking about WordPress 6 and where it fits into the overall WordPress roadmap. And so just some things about preparing for WordPress 6. We can cover probably in that opening section, just like any other WordPress release. Peter will cover, I think, probably the more interesting part of this, or the more, not interesting, the more practical part, I should say, about the block editor improvements. These are probably the things I think the majority of people are going to want to jump into and see. I get the kind of the, I should say less glamorous, but kind of the things you're probably less likely to jump into. But again, we'll talk about full site editor improvements. Then we'll wrap up some, kitchen sink, other enhancements that are worth highlighting. We'll do some final thoughts, and then, as I said, we'll open it up to Q&A to everyone at that time. But certainly, as you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat. Peter or I will be monitoring it, so we can bring up your question to the appropriate speaker. So I'm Ray. Welcome if you're here for the first time. I've been in IT for 25 plus years. Primarily as a software developer, software architect, worked for some large corporations. Been using WordPress for around 6+ years. So I kind of went back to that WordPress 19-year birthday thing and looked at that to see when did I first see WordPress? It's got to be at least 6 years or prior to that. I don't think I got it at first. When I first looked at WordPress, just coming as a software developer, I was like, what is this thing? What is content management system? What is it? I didn't quite compute for me. I'm currently self-employed. I run a website design business. I live in Newington, Connecticut, married, no kids, and we have one crazy old cat, and I'm a geek. Peter.
I am Peter Ingersoll. I have been using technology in support of marketing, communication, sales, creative work for most of my career. I build and maintain WordPress websites for a variety of clients, a bit of a focus on nonprofits. I've been using WordPress while I've been building websites and other data-driven tools. I've been using WordPress for about 10 years. Although I'm not a developer, I'm a builder. So that's kind of, I focus less on code, although I get dabble in code for a little bit. I've worked at the Hartford Current, our state's major newspaper, an advertising agency, a logistics company. I'm self-taught in a lot of, when I say a lot of everything that I do, pretty much, and live in South Windsor, married with 2 adult children and 2, I still haven't changed it, cats, who are locked out of the room right now because one of them was just demanding a little too much attention.
All right, cool. So I include these slides in all our presentations. It doesn't really pertain too much to tonight, but if you go back and look at our previous meetups, you'll see that we often focus in the past year, I guess, we've been focusing our meetups around a project that we've been building from scratch. So if you're interested in that project, go back and look at those meetups specifically. But what we've been doing with those projects is we've been building the website from scratch using WordPress, using free plugins, free themes, and all that. And we've been building off of it from meetup to meetup. On occasion, we take breaks like tonight just to talk about WordPress in general or jump out to another topic. But everything we're talking about always applies to this demo site that we're building, including tonight. Eventually, the site will be updated to WordPress 6 as well. So again, if you're interested in checking that out, we're building this sample animal rescue website. A lot of things we've done, though, again, even if you have no interest in building an animal rescue website, you can still go back and hopefully learn something from our previous meetups related to that. We built it out pretty far. We've got to figure out what to do to finish it. Not that a website's ever done, but we've probably built out the major functionality on it. But anyway, go back and take a look at it. If you're interested to see what it looks like, it's at build.hartfordwp.com. So check that out. But let's jump into today's focus, which is WordPress 6.0. I'll talk a little bit, and I'll shut up and let Peter chime in as well too on. So where does this fit as far as the overall WordPress roadmap? And this slide I reused from something I showed, I think, in our meetup at the end of last year or early this year, maybe January this year. And this is from the 2021 State of the Word. So if you're not familiar with that, that's something that Matt Mullenweg, who's one of the founders of WordPress, he does the State of the Word roundup every year just to talk about the previous year and where kind of WordPress is heading, in the future. So the slide he presented, or the roadmap he talked about, was these kind of 4 major phases of WordPress. So again, if you're new to WordPress, you've missed kind of phase 1, which was this thing that we call Gutenberg. So again, if you go back to, I talked about previously the history of WordPress. WordPress itself is built more as a blogging tool, and its editor wasn't exactly, let's say, the friendliest compared to newer things that are out there in the market these days, like Wix and Squarespace, etc. So phase 1 was really around this Gutenberg block editor. So that was the introduction of it. It's been refined quite a bit in the past 4 years now. So it is actually, night and day compared to when that first got launched in 2018. So phase 2, kind of what we're in right now, this current phase, is expanding the block editor a bit. So full site editing, which I'll explain a bit more later in the presentation, is ultimately using that block editor concept for the entire website and not just blog posts and blog pages. And that really led to something over the past, I'd say, couple of years. We've been hearing more and more about block-based development, block-based themes, block patterns. So block was kind of the buzzword of the past couple of years. So where WordPress 6.0 fits into that is it's an extension of that. So it's not, even though it's a 6.0 release, which a lot of times, a major release like that, you think would be radical. In a lot of ways, this one's not radical, which is kind of surprising. I'd say it's more an evolution than revolution kind of thing. So, and some of these things we've seen already. And that's why during my presentation, at least, I'll go back and forth a little bit to 5.9 versus 6.0 and show you kind of subtle changes that you'll see. And then the later phases, which we haven't gotten into yet, will be interesting. So phase 3, maybe starting next year, is collaboration. And then long-term is kind of making WordPress itself more multilingual. So this is kind of where we are. WordPress 6.0 is part of phase 2 of the roadmap. And this is just a quick slide to show, again, we'll go into this in more detail through tonight's presentation, but even though I'm saying that it's an evolution, there is quite a bit packed into it. This one, as I said, it's not as radical as like Gutenberg getting released, but there's still a significant number of updates. There's around 400 plus updates included in it, around 500 bug fixes for various issues, and 91 new features altogether. So I put a link here. We'll share all these links afterwards, and we'll share the slides with these links afterwards. But there's a really good product walkthrough given by the WordPress team, the team that was involved in producing this release, where they kind of walk through all this. But this one slide here, this picture kind of shows you in a nutshell some of the major things that we'll be talking about tonight. Anything else around just WordPress 6, Peter, in terms of your overall thoughts or kind of like where it fits in compared to some of the other releases that we've seen recently?
Yeah. The first thing is the interesting difference WordPress has over almost all other software, where you think a 6.0, you know, the major number release is a dramatic change in the product, or a big jump, and it's not really the case. 5.8 and 5.9 probably had more dramatic changes than 6. What I found, and I'll be talking about probably quite often, because I think it's important to the people who are part of our meetup and all, who are builders and DIYers and all, is trying to figure out where 6.0 fits in the whole, in that roadmap, and transitioning from a certain way of building sites to a different way of building sites. And while all the talk has been about this different block-based theme way of building sites and full site editing, we don't have to leave, and we're going to cover this a few times tonight, are the themes that we're using now. So we're at this sort of like point where a lot of the focus has been on a lot of things that affect, quite honestly, a much smaller group of people. So we're going to talk about a lot of these things, but keep in mind that some of them are like, okay, it's more FYI than it is go out and do this, unless you want to, you know, teach yourself. But it's a very interesting thing right now, where all the talk is here, but everybody else is still working here. They say everybody, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. What I didn't include, just again, more of a logistics thing for people, is so WordPress 6.0 comes out, according to what I've heard, it's still on schedule for coming out tomorrow. Yeah. So if you have a site that is probably with, let's say, more managed hosting, or even a lot of traditional hosting now, a lot of times they'll update it automatically for you. So you may just get an email saying, hey, it's been updated, you know, and nothing that you've done. But what we always highly suggest, whether, especially a WordPress core update like this, is make sure you have a backup. So tonight, after this presentation's over, make sure that either you have an automated backup that has run successfully tonight, or, you know, today, or take a snapshot just in case, you know. So that's one thing. Where, I mean, again, this thing's been tested for quite a while. In general, these core releases are pretty stable, but you never know. It's good to have something backed up.
Yeah, and a lot of people will opt out of updating until like the 6.0.1 version comes out, in case there's like an initial set of bugs that get found now that it's out in the general population. So
I would say I haven't tested a lot, I should say, on even the demo site that I'll be using tonight, but in general, my past experience with these WordPress releases, the core releases, is it's generally not WordPress that's going to cause you the issue. It's going to be one of your plugins that hasn't been tested with it, or, you know, there's some little quirk to it. So that's more likely to be the thing. But, you know, sometimes it's easier to, or safer just to roll back WordPress to the previous version versus you know, versus trying to debug one plugin if you got a ton of plugins there. So
that's right. Yep.
Okay. So Peter, you get the interesting stuff. Block editor improvements. I'll change the slides for you if you like.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. So the one thing that I found over this last week of really testing is going in and seeing the things that I'm seeing in demos and tutorials and blog posts and the welcome screen, which will show, talking about all these great features. But what we have to keep in mind is that some of these improvements require a block theme. So I'm going to do my best to kind of let you know which of the features you may probably won't see, and we'll focus on the ones that you do. So for example, I kind of blanked out on here the red boxes around you know, template creation is part of what full site editing and the block themes. Ray will be talking about that as he will about the style switcher, but even things like in the bottom right where you'll see it, and those always talk about border controls and all. Border controls I've only found to work so far in one, maybe two themes, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. But we're at an interesting place where some of the improvements are going to not apply to a lot of people, but I can say with some confidence that we'll start seeing some of those things come in as certain themes. Cadence, for example, has talked about the theme that we've been using for our build site, on how they are going to become sort of a hybrid theme, so you can turn on or off some of the full site editing features. So again, in this kind of transition, so some of the features that you'll see, you'll go, how come I'm not seeing it? Well, it's probably your theme. And in some cases, it could even be plugins, because now we have overlap on certain features where a plugin may be doing something that now Core does, but you know, your plugin may override what Core does, so it does differently. So just what is always the case, especially if you're learning WordPress, you're going to go to a tutorial, you're going to go to read something, and you're going to say, it doesn't look anything like what I see. And that happens because there's themes and plugins and all that all change the way WordPress works. So, you know, keeping that in mind, we're going to encounter some of that and try to even demo some of that tonight. So one of the things, and I started with, okay, great, you know, borders and spacing, they're talking about it. I really like this idea of not having the plugin where I can just use the core blocks to be able to control some of the layout styles. And there's new features with, you know, borders and radius around the borders, and spacing between things in groups and in galleries. And then I went to our site and none of it worked. And then I said, well, let me take a look at a lot of these themes. And I looked at some of the top ones to me, top ones that are popular, ones that I recommend. All the block themes worked as expected, and I tried 4, and once I figured they were all yes, so I'm sure it kind of keeps down. There's not really that many block themes available to us yet compared to all the other themes. But then when I was looking at the popular themes, ones, you know, I recommend Astra, Bloxy, Generate, Press, and Cadence are the top ones. The only one that I saw that had that featured all of these particular features of borders and spacing was Astra, which I've moved a lot of my new sites to Cadence, and now I'm like, oh, good old Astra, one of the most popular right now. I think they are still the most popular theme out there. They proactively, preemptively went to like a hybrid model where some of these block editing, what you'd see in a block theme, worked for them. So, but Generate, Press, and Cadence, yeah, some of these features just didn't work with them. Another one that did work with, interesting enough, with only a few of the things, the spacing, was there's a theme out there called the Page Builder Framework, which is another one of these sort of blank themes where it's especially geared to people who are using page builders like Elementor and Beaver Builder. And if you're using those, having these features almost doesn't matter, because you're probably using all of the modules, similar to the Hello Elementor theme, which is sort of the base theme if you're using the Elementor page builder. But we like blocks. We're using the block editor. We're using Cadence for our site, but know that you may run into some limitations or some things that don't work. So this took some time just to try to figure out. And I was talking to some key people in the WordPress organization about this, and it was like, you know, yeah, this is a lot of what they're talking about when you talk about all of those features are for block themes. So that was kind of an interesting discovery. So we're going to go through the next slides relatively quickly, because then I'm going to kind of walk through these, so I can talk through them, but I'm going to walk, you know, we're going to do some demoing. So you'll see a lot of the things talking about what, you know, what is coming to 6.0 that's going to be real helpful. And the overall editing experience continues to improve with each version of the core block editor, the Gutenberg plugin that has been used to test, you know, what gets tested in the Gutenberg plugin, and you can load the Gutenberg plugin yourself and see what's coming next in the block editor, and they roll things into core. There's been a lot of improvements when we first looked at Gutenberg 2-3 years ago, Ray.
At least
you know,
3. Yeah.
there were a lot of shortcomings, especially compared to page builders. So there's been a lot of improvements, and the overall editing experience is a big thing that's improved. You know, being able to select text across multiple blocks and edit all at once. This idea of once you highlight text between blocks in 5.9, Well, both blocks get fully, you're grabbing everything. Whereas in 6.0, you can grab things between blocks without grabbing the whole block. I'll show you those types of things. Neat things like, for people who are very keyboard oriented, there's a new feature to put in links really quick. Having styles be able to work. A lot of people don't think about the fact when you put down a block, you can then turn it into another block, transforming that block, and you can, if you style something and then you change it, now they're getting better at having those styles carry over from the transformation. The way the editor works on your sidebar, when you're working on a block and having things, instead of taking vertical space, they slide in more elegantly. There's improved typography controls, it's drop caps over here, over there, and also bringing things together. The concept, the idea of locking blocks, it's sort of at the beginning stages, and it'll be more interesting for agencies when they create pages and they want to lock things down versus, just a DIYer. But at the same time, if you have something you really like and you want to make sure you don't want to move it or change it, you can lock that block. The next slide we're talking about is the better color controls. So now being able to more easily select colors for text, for backgrounds, and use transparencies in that, and how transparency can really kind of make it be an improvement to your overall layout, if that's something. So that's something much easier now to use. Next slide, Ray. All right, so the block inserter. The block inserter, I'll show you, is the list where you see all your blocks and all. There's been a lot of improvements there. That's been a continuing improvement. It used to be, there were some good plugins for that. Now it's built into core. But this, when you open up the block inserter, it used to be everything was open and you have to close things. Now, nested blocks, a container that has things in it now is closed and you open what you want. So it's a lot more useful that way. There's a better interaction between what's happening in the inserter, that list of blocks. And I shouldn't call it the inserter. This is the block list. I just realized that I use inserter when I mean the list. I'll show it to you. You'll see what it is. The ability to select things either by shift click, some of the things that we're used to with other software, shift arrow, dragging and dropping in that list view, and being able to group, ungroup, delete all through the list view if that's what you want, because you can see your hierarchy. And we'll take a look at that. Ignore the word inserter there. Border spacing layout, I already talked a little bit about that. Works with some block themes. It works with all block themes that I've found so far, and a few classic hybrid themes. This is where you can add border width, colors, radius on the corners, things like that. And it's for some blocks, it's the group block and the gallery use a lot of these tools, but there are other blocks that also, like quotes and things like that, where you see these new features available in your sidebar. Yeah, the group block enhancement specifically allows you to have more control over what's inside the block and borders and colors around it. The gallery, this is one thing I do definitely wish was universal to all themes. Just the simple being able to change your spacing, the gaps between your images and your gallery, and having a lot more control over the gallery. It's in the block themes, it's in Astra, not in all themes. And then, yeah, being able to easily switch between stack, row, and group when you have a bunch of items. It's a little, it's interesting to figure out. It's based on something called Flexbox on how things lay out. Where I think it'll end up being more valuable is when you can tie that to what you see on your desktop and your mobile. But with one click, you can kind of change. Like if you've got a bunch of things up vertically stacked, you can make them horizontally stacked. The next slide we're going to be talking about is images and galleries. A neat thing is how the cover block can dynamically use the featured image. I've heard a lot going to the different tutorials out there, is people saying, I don't see the value, but I know there's plenty of times when I wanted to use part of it, especially in the new WordPress where you can even have a focal point of an image. Maybe you want to you carry your design from your header down. It's very useful if you're building templates in the full site editor, but we'll show you how you can use that, the page or post featured image dynamically within the block. Adding image, there's a click in an image to add text, basically turns it into a cover block. The greater control of the image border, the corner radii. Again, the asterisk doesn't work on everything. Same thing with the gallery image spacing. We're almost done with just the words that I'm going to still pull back up. So more block patterns. So block patterns is going to be something I believe is going to just make building websites much better. It's still sort of unclear to a lot of folks. I think we got your spreadsheet up here or something. What a block pattern is a number of blocks pulled together with a certain design style that you can easily copy and paste or insert into a page. And there are a lot of resources for block patterns. A lot of them come with the theme or the various themes, whether it's a block theme or a classic theme, if you will, that has adopted the block editor. So block patterns are a very handy way of pulling in a pre-designed content and be able to use those things together. So theme developers you can expect to see more block patterns being built with a similar look and feel that go with specific themes, so you can build sites very, very quickly. The online resource for block patterns is WordPress.org. If you go under patterns, and one thing they've added is kind of interesting is you can make your own block patterns on WordPress.org and submit them to be put into the block pattern library. So you could be an author of a block pattern that somebody else in the world decides to download and use on their site. So that's kind of a neat little thing. It's curated. There'll be people looking at what goes into the block patterns, but yeah, you can build your own block patterns there. Next slide is, I think our last is sort of a miscellaneous slide here. Yeah, the buttons improved. When you create buttons, the buttons is a block that has button blocks in it. You create your first button. Now when you add blocks, if you've styled the first one, the following ones will keep the same style. Interesting enough, that wasn't in previous versions. And there's new styling for social icons and tag cloud blocks. I don't know anybody who uses tag clouds anymore, but there's some new styling there. And now I will show you some of these things. Did you have, while I'm pulling this up, anything that you came across, Ray? I think I kind of covered a bunch of things. You're muted.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. No, I think seeing it live, I think is the good thing, because there's a lot.
Yeah, I wanted to walk through it because I wanted to make sure I was covering everything. And then what I did after I made the slides is I went ahead and put those in a page. This is our build site. This is a copy of this is the site we've been doing, the shelter that Ray introduced at the beginning. I made a copy of the site. So instead of build.hartfordwp.com, I created our site, hartfordwp.com, that I have now added. If I go to the dashboard, you will see that this is using WordPress. Now it's release candidate 4. It was 3 because it's supposed to come out tomorrow. So this is even further along. When you get this welcome screen, you can go to learn more about it. This will give you a lot of the overviews of the things that I'm talking about. We'll also talk about things that may or may not apply to you. I had a conversation with WordPress folks about what should or shouldn't be on this, depending on who you are, but this is what you'll see. So taking that into account, we're going to go through some of the designs. So I have created a page here. Oops, that's not the one. I hope it's saved it. If not, we'll just, there we go. Which has the slides, and we're just going to walk through. Now, I'm going to cheat to show you everything, and then I'll come back and show you kind of variations if there's time. So I'm going to go back. I've opened up another window. I'm going to go to my appearance themes. And we have Cadence active. I'm going to change it to the default 2022 theme. Now, when I do that, and this is also for new folks who have never changed a theme, if you do that and you visit your site, it's going to look very different depending on the theme and what you've done. But going back is not a problem. So you can do this. I'm changing to a block theme so that I can show you some of the features that you may or may not probably see in the future. But also, interestingly enough, you can change things in a block theme, go back to your main theme, and what you've changed will actually stay, which was an interesting thing to discover. And then what I'm also going to do, just to be safe, again, related to the same type of thing, and I haven't run into this as a problem, but it's also a way to demonstrate, in the don't worry about it. We're going to deactivate the two plugins, Generate Blocks and Cadence Blocks, which has done a lot of the design for us. So we're only looking at kind of core design. And when I do that, and I look at the site just to show you, now it's even different. Some of the things that relied on those plugins has gone away. I think it's important to sometimes take a look at things like this because of hey, when I changed something, why did everything change? I changed my theme and now everything blew up. Well, if you're relying on things either from your theme or from your plugins, that is something that happens. Now, if I reactivate the two plugins that we need and change the theme back to Cadence, we'll be back pretty much the way we are. I've changed it now just so I can go through this demo one way, and then I can kind of show you what's different. So using the text, I am now editing this page. I can preview it for those who haven't done this. I can see this page on the front end. Again, I've lost all my other design work because I changed. I changed the theme and all. But so let's kind of go through these. So selecting text across multiple blocks. So, what that is this kind of interesting, say I had a paragraph here. Here is a paragraph with text. Here is another paragraph. And I wanted, for some reason, to select something between this, get that out of the way. I should put that in the top. Between these two blocks. The old way, both blocks would be fully highlighted at this point. The new way is, well, now I can treat those differently. If I wanted for some reason to delete those and now join that, this is the idea that you can move across blocks. A lot of this, for people who have used, say, the classic editor or use Word to edit documents, is to allow a more common, natural way of working with text. Now, you may not need to do that, but at the same time, having that capability of just saying, well, I want to grab a little bit of this and a little bit of that. If I wanted to make that bold with one click, again, if I need, why I would need, oops. Let's see if it's sticking. It's not sticking. That's interesting. So that was this an unexpected action there where that didn't stick. And I wonder if, and I'm going to do one quick thing here. Sometimes, just FYI, if you run into an issue where all of a sudden your editor is acting weird, refresh the page. A lot of this is happening in locally loaded JavaScript, I think, Ray. I can't remember exactly, but sometimes you run into this issue where text just doesn't work the way you want it to. But that idea that you can grab across blocks. Here's an interesting thing. If I'm here is a link to our contact page, and I do open bracket, I now get a list of of links, and I can start, this is like the most recent one, but I could say contact, and it's going to show my contact page. And now it gives me a live link if I preview that. So that's a new feature where, see, now this is a link. It's using the page title. You can change it, but for folks who are much more keyboard oriented and all, that's a quick way of putting a link to another piece of content. That's what the two brackets to quickly open the link manual. One thing that is interesting is the keep existing styles when you transform some blocks. So say, like, I've put bold here, and say I wanted to make this word here red. So I'm going to change the color to a red color. And now I've got this block that has this design, and now I want to transform this, say, into separate paragraphs. My bold and my red and all will stay with the transformation. So that didn't always happen. It depended on what blocks. So this idea that, and I'm just going to Control Z it to bring this back, but that idea that if you style something and you say, and a lot of folks don't even know that you can go up here, and when you click on what type of block it is, it says you can change it to these different blocks, you know, and you'll get a different list depending on what block it is, because not every block can be changed into every other block. But this idea that, oh, I want to change this all to, I don't know, columns. I'm not even sure how it'll handle columns right now. Let's see. Oh, it's all going to be one column using the same. So if we had different paragraphs and you grab and change the columns, but whatever styling you had put in there will carry over. So that's a neat way to say, again, the idea being that it would allow you to style your document and then go back when you're editing it. You don't lose work when you change from block to block or things like that. So it's all meant to allow you to kind of type freely, enter and get things, and then change things. The block style preview slide out from the editing bar, what that might be is something like this. So say we're going to put it's a small thing, but it's a nice thing. Say I'm going to put in an image, and I might want to decide whether I want that to be the default square or rounded. Well, it used to show up down below here as the choices. Now it saves space, the vertical space in the sidebar, and your options are now out to the left of that sidebar. So it keeps things visible in the bar, and then only the stuff that you're using. So there's different options depending on what you're doing. You'll see things now, instead of being in that vertical list, will come out. Previews and color pickers and things like that kind of slide out. So that makes for a nice editing experience. The typography controls, like say you're looking under a paragraph, and what the typography controls do is you would have controls in different areas, like the way drop caps work and all, and now it's kind of grouped in your sidebar. Typography controls, like say for a paragraph in different blocks, you'll have different choices here. But this is where you can now pick your line height. You know, do I want, I don't have a lot of text. I can set different sizes. I can expand it. So all the typography is now, instead of when it first started, you would have to do this in CSS, and then other features were added. Now kind of bringing this together, putting it in the sidebar in a neat area. This is a neat way of kind of managing your typography all in one place, including things like your let's get out of this. Where is it? Interesting. Another thing where the drop cap was also in that list, but I wonder if I have something that it's not recognizing that.
Do you have to have the text selected for that first, or no?
Yeah, you're right. I might not have the whole block selected.
Yeah.
No. That's interesting. I have to come back, because when I just did it, that drop text, not that I ever use drop caps, but instead of it being in a different place, it was in that area. You'll find it there. The typography has all been brought together. I wonder, let me get rid of this block. Okay.
Yeah,
And
Peter, just sorry, Sue was saying for the drop, is it in the drop down arrow in the paragraph toolbar? If you click
here,
that,
so yeah. So this is where it was.
No.
That's the thing, where this is where it was, and it's moved over to here,
It's
except
a little
for
strange.
now.
It's like strike through is, that is a little confusing. Like if you go back to the drop down arrow, strike through is there, but yeah, not drop.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I can't tell you why I'm not.
Thank you, WordPress. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and we'll see more of this, I think, moving over into, and that's, again, that's very much of a page builder way of doing things, right? You have a module or an element or whatever, you know, page builder you're using might call it, and then when you open up like a paragraph block element, you'll get all of those options. In my opinion, very often too many, but that idea that you're looking for them in but one place. Although I can show you, here's an example. We'll talk color a little bit, but again, where the slide out of the options come out here instead of opening up things vertically and getting lost. It's just a neater experience. And block locking is in your block options. There's a little lock. And when you lock a block, when you say, I don't want to change it, you can disable the movement, disable the removal of it so it can't be deleted, or make it both. So now I don't have my move option. I shouldn't have a delete option because the block is locked. Now, here's where it's in its infancy. I can always just unlock it and now be able to do that. But it's almost, at the very least, it starts off as a warning, like, hey, don't mess up with this. I've designed this. Maybe you have a whole group block that's all set up a certain way and you don't want anybody to touch it. That's a way of locking it. So it's a neat way of locking content. Agencies would like this when it kind of matures, where like an editor and admin can lock blocks and a contributor can't change things. You know, you might have a user role that sets things up. We're talking about a better color controls with transparency. So I'm going to create a cover block here. In my cover block, I might put an image of, we'll pick this camera as the background image. And now say I want to put in this block, in this cover block, you can put other blocks inside. And say I want to put in another cover block that has a white background, but now I can go to the color choice and I can say, okay, I want white, but now, and of course I picked a bad color for this. There's a slider here for transparency. Where I should be able to, let me change the color so I can actually see it. So say it's this color. And now I want to go here. I always love it when it makes a liar out of me. I know. I think it's the cover block on top of a color block. What I should do is, let me remove this. Let me go to insert a heading. But this is a heading. And now for this block, I should be able to make the text white. And make the background. Let's pick that same. Let's pick a color here, say I wanted this color, but I wanted to change my transparency. Thank you for working. But this idea, if you can see, I can change the transparency. Now you can get different effects. Like maybe I want black text on a white background, but I still want to see some of the images. That's where you'll different color to that color picker will show up consistently with more blocks now, and that ability to pick a color and then set the transparency is a new feature here. So color select the black background, parse and transparent. Yeah, so interesting design, say on when you're putting something on top of something, for example, a cover block background image, something on top of it, you want to have some transparency to what you place there. So the block inserter improvements, that should be the list view. Just so we're not confused, list view. The list view is this great box right up here. When you click this list view, on the left side, you're going to see all of your blocks listed out. And what's nice is as you mouse over them, you can see, there's an interaction between, this is my heading for border spacing layout. It'll highlight, here's my list, that type of thing, to be able to click on your options for that block in the list view, block things, unlock things, add things. That's good. Here's an example of where we added this cover block that is actually cover block with a heading block inside it. This opened up already contracted, whatever the word. Collapsed. All words work, but collapsed is the correct word. And especially if you have a layout where you have many things nested inside of things, having it collapse is okay. Now I can go to that thing, open it up, and deal with what's in there. And having the ability to take, like, say I wanted to show my list view improvements, which is this heading here. Now I can say, click both of these things, and I can drop them. Maybe I wanted to show that higher up on my document. You can drag and drop within that list view in a much easier way. Before you had to, you might want to group things, and you could also do the same thing by grabbing multiple blocks, in the design. But having that kind of control in the list view it's really handy, being able to drag and drop those multiple blocks, having the full, you might want to group things, like say I said, I've got the heading, the list, these should always be together. Maybe I want to group them. And now I have a new group block, and in that group block are my heading and my list. So this is the idea of being able to have a lot more control within that list view. So this interaction between the list view now, and especially if you're writing long posts and you're using your headings properly, and you might be setting up some IDs. This is something that's kind of neat if you didn't know this. Say I've selected my group block, and when I go down to the advanced settings for that group block, now I can set my anchor, which is like the ID, and maybe this is my list view anchor, and all right. I think I got something lagging on my interaction, because what you will see.
Did you have to do update for now? You don't need to update first.
Yeah, let me update this anyway. You know what I'm trying to do when you put in you give something an ID. In this case, giving an anchor, you'll see that name land over here in the list view. I can't tell you why I'm not seeing it right now. Maybe it's because it's release candidate 4. Let's see if this little paragraph would work. See,
yeah.
Isn't that funny? That group block didn't like it, but this is the idea that, and why you would use this effectively is to, when you're organizing a longer document.
I think I know I have a theory of why that didn't work at the group block, because I don't think that, so HTML anchors are really HTML. Like you'll see that on your page source, because that's a way that you can jump down, pages and links. I don't think these groups are really like divs or spans, maybe,
Yeah.
because you can put an anchor on a div or a span, but maybe be curious. Like these groups, I think, are just a visual thing in the list view. I don't think it's something actually see
yeah.
on the output.
You
It's
know
funny
what?
that they let you put it there though, because that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we'd have to kind of break that down and look what's happening on the HTML. But that is a way where it's most effective is when you have a document and you've got like your headings, you're using your headings properly, where you can say, instead of looking at the word heading, you have some version of your anchor, so you know where you are. You can see it between the highlighting and all, but these all say heading, heading, heading. But you might have, heading, color controls and all. So now you can see that visually in your list. And then when you create things like a table of contents to be able to jump to content, that's where those anchors become handy. So not only do you see it in your list, but you can have a table of contents or link to something directly, because now you have this block that now has an anchor attached to it that says not only this page, but this part of this page, which becomes handy. Order, spacing, and layout. This is, let me move my, I'll create something new, it'll be easy. So if I am looking at, say I've got a group of, I know, let me just grab some of this text. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. And then I am going to convert it to 3 paragraphs. Oops. Four paragraphs. I have a lag between my keyboard and my desktop. And another reason where if you get a little confused where the list view kind of comes in handy is being able to kind of highlight over and go, wait a minute, how come I get this weird space? And you may find you have like a ghost paragraph in there with no text, that type of thing. Now say I take these, do it this way. I'll grab all of them. I will group them. And now that I have a group, I have new border controls. Again, this won't work. This is one of those features that will work on some specific blocks and not necessarily in non-block themes. But here's the idea of, okay, the first thing is you might want to put a border, and say that you want the border of 10 pixels, and you can choose whether it's pixels or M's or Rems or all the different types. You say you want a solid border, and you might want to make this red. So now here's your border. Now you might want to come up here, and this is all in blocks that are using the border and spacing. Say now I want to give it some padding of say 20 on the inside, kind of air that out. Maybe I want my box to have rounded corners, or if you unlink this, you can say, well, I want rounded corners only on certain corners. Maybe I've got this neat design where I'm doing things like that. And then something that's also kind of neat is this block spacing, where I can say I want everything in the block a certain amount of space apart. And say it's 50 pixels. In this case, I'm using pixels, or 100 pixels. You're controlling a lot of what's happening within, in this case, a group block, using the borders and the spacing controls that are available to us now. It's pretty handy. I'm hoping it becomes more ubiquitous in a lot of themes. It's going to be a lot of the theme developers who aren't putting out block themes to enable some of these features, but I think they're handy. If you had images in there and things like that, you could do a lot of those same types of things. Speaking of images, so any questions so far? Questions on that? I can show, I think if I come to this block, which is a list block, I'll show you another block. If I had, say I took this, I copied this, let me duplicate this block. Again, the more we use kind of the tools that we've got, I'm going to duplicate that block. So now I have 2 of those. I'm going to take that block and I'm going to convert it to a pull quote for some strange reason. It's not a good pull quote. Maybe I'll do that one. My delete key is not working. Isn't that funny?
Is this the new computer you built?
This is the old one. My new computer is still broken. Thanks for reminding me.
Sure.
Now that I've changed this to a pull quote. I've converted that. The pull quote is another example of, it's another block that happens to have those same controls, where I can have a border of, I don't know why I would do this, but 50, and then I want to change my color to pink. And oh, but look, there's a transparency slider there where you can modify the colors. So again, you have those same consistent block and border and spacing and color tools now showing up in more and more blocks. It's not all blocks. You know, the paragraph block doesn't have it because that would be a different kind of block once you put it into something like that. The group block is one where you have the most interesting control over. Again, I just wish it was available to us in all our themes.
I wasn't really surprised. I didn't see any questions in the chat, but just my quick comments while you catch your breath on that. That really surprises me that those things are they're not like across the board for themes, because the group block itself is available regardless of whether you're using a block theme or not. So I'm curious why those settings wouldn't work on other
Yeah.
themes. Like,
as am I, and that was a big challenge with this. Let me go to.
it might be like, if I think about Cadence, I mean, even in Cadence, though, when you're doing the Cadence rows and columns and all that, those are Cadence blocks. Cadence is, like, as far as I know, Cadence doesn't override any of the WordPress core blocks. You know what I mean? So that's funny.
Right. Most of the block collections, Cadence, Astra's new one, they renamed it Spectra, generate blocks, which I use, Stacker, and on and on and on. There's all these different block collections. They don't change the core block. They add their own custom headline.
Right.
There are plugins like Editor, not
Plus.
Editor Kit. What's that?
Editor Plus.
Editor Plus, which does add all of these controls to the core
Right.
blocks.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to get an interesting thing. And what I haven't tried yet is experimenting with, well, what if I have Editor Plus running with the new core blocks in a block theme? You know, what takes precedent? And typically a plugin will supersede a core function, loading the core and then loading the. Have you had experience with trying that out yet?
And not with 6.0 yet.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to change back to Cadence just for a moment. And then I'm going to come back here. I'm going to reload this page. And what you'll see is a lot of those things that we changed stick. Some of the spacing is a little weird. So in a weird way, if you like the way of doing this, instead of writing CSS, go to a block theme, make the changes, and go back to your regular theme, and it'll stick, because basically behind the scenes it's writing CSS. I think if we come here and go to edit as HTML. No, not. Oh, I was on the wrong block. If I go to group, and look at that, I can't edit as HTML. So it remembers the CSS, or at least so far. If I will preview that, I should. For those kind of new, hopefully you're, I know I'm clicking on a lot of things. That's why I go to an InstaWP and just experiment, because a lot of this we find out simply by experimenting and trying things. So here's an example that those changes that I made, while I can't undo them using that tool while Cadence is running, that change stayed, which is kind of an interesting little thing here. Let me go back to the theme. So I'm going to go back to, these are all the themes that I experimented with, and the one that is now the default. And while I'm loading it, just to having a block theme as the default and going to full site editing when it's still kind of young is a point of good debate, in my opinion. Is that in fact okay? So I like the idea of being able to tell folks, and I think we're gonna, we've got to, don't panic there again. This idea that you can you update, or say you're adding something, you're going to a new site, and all of a sudden you're in the block site editor, you're putting a brand new load of WordPress, but you saw somebody who was using Cadence or Astra. Go load the theme and work that way. You're not tied to it. We have all of these options. It can be confusing because we have so many options, but with those options, you see, and now, now I'm here and I've got those controls again. So images and galleries real quick. We'll try to do it. I'm pretty late on time, aren't I?
Yeah, you got about like another, let's say, go for like another 10 minutes if you.
Okay.
You're good.
So if I wanted to put an image here, and I'll go to my media library and I'll pick this guy here. This is where you've got, some controls here that are a little bit different. You've got ways originally where you can just kind of go to the circle. Now you can have a little bit more control. And again, by unchecking that, this little box here says make all four corners the same. By undoing it, now you can do those independently, and this will give you again that option to be able to say maybe I have this style that I'm using consistently through things where I have rounded corners mixed with pointed corners and things like that. So you have that capability in images. But where it gets interesting is when you add a gallery. So let me add a gallery. I think I'm having keyboard problems. Okay. So / there's a lot of ways of inserting. You can go to, again, for folks who haven't tried this yet, this add a block will bring you up kind of the quick list, and say you wanted a gallery, you could start typing gallery there. You also, this is something kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but it's real quick. You also see block patterns. If a block pattern that is loaded with your theme, that you have these block patterns available to you, I mentioned the block patterns before. If you have one that matches the name, you will also see the block pattern and a miniature version of it, a preview of it in your block inserter, which is kind of nice once you get to, again, if you develop a workflow where you've got certain things, maybe you've even created your own blocks, you can go in there and just grab them through just a few keystrokes here. You can insert that way. I can come up to the big master inserter here, and I can pick image. Oops, I do not want that. So there's a lot of ways. I'm going to add a gallery here. And now I'm going to go, I can upload a bunch of images or go to my media library where I have a number of images already loaded. So we'll grab just any number of images. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Create a new gallery. I can move these around. I can give them captions, inserting the gallery. When I insert the gallery, that gallery has certain functions associated or attributes assigned to it. By default, if I look at the gallery, it's saying, okay, I've got 3 columns. Maybe I want only 2 columns, depending on how I want to show things. But where it gets really interesting with the new features is, again, the block spacing is a neat way of now, maybe I want no spacing between my images, or maybe I want 50 pixels, a lot of air it out kind of thing, and I want to go 3 columns. You've got more control right within your options for your gallery. And what a gallery is really a group block of images with specific choices, because it's an image and not showing some other things because it's gallery. But this is that whole relatively recent change now where you can go in and each image, you can manage the details of that image. You can change the border of individual images you want, or you can kind of set it default. So there's a lot more control in the gallery. There's some neat things I was going to show where you can actually copy and paste from your file manager a bunch of pictures, paste them on your desktop, get a list of images that'll upload to your media directory. Won't have elegant file names necessarily. And then you could take that whole list of images that you did, grab them all and say, convert that to a gallery, and magically you have a gallery. The whole gallery option has really kind of come a long way. I like it a lot. Instead of loading any number of gallery plugins and things like that. I do have one plugin that I like with galleries. We can show at the end, where you can make a nice little lightbox feature for your images and your galleries with a very simple little plugin. If you like the kind of the click on it and have it come big on the screen and all. So there's a neat plugin for that. So any questions on the images and galleries?
Nothing in the chat right now.
Okay. I know we're throwing a lot at you, but that's what's going on. So those block patterns, again, if you wanted to insert and you knew the pattern, you could do it here. A lot of cases, you'll go to your big block inserter and click on patterns, and then you will see all the patterns that you can load. So there's been a lot of focus on block patterns. We're going to see things more again in this kind of that preview, that click. If you say, oh, I really like this, and you want to insert it, you just click on it and there it is. And now you can go in and edit the images that are behind there, because again, these are just pre-grouped and pre-formatted blocks, whether it's text or headlines or images. You like the style, you go in and say, okay, but I'm going to change this bird to one of our pets, and the background to maybe in this case our animal shelter building or something like that. There's a lot of things you can do, but the patterns are all pre-built. And that idea that you can go out to wordpress.org/patterns, find a bunch more there, copy, you just go there, you hit copy, you come to your site, you hit paste, and now you've got all this pre-designed stuff. I can show that if anyone's interested. And we're in our last group. So, and these are less interesting to me. The buttons could be interesting. We've been using things like some of the block collections like Cadence that has the buttons, but say you come in and when you create buttons, you basically start off with one button in a buttons block group. You can go to that button and then you can go and say, again, here's your color picker. It's more consistency. And so you want to make that one green, and you want to make the text black, and you want to give it a, make it more of a round button. And now you say, okay, I like that style. You want to put your text there, but now you want to go within that button and you want to add another button. This is where the style you've given it in the first button will carry over to your subsequent buttons. They can be styled differently now, but by default, it'll be like, say, I said, well, that's my red button, with white text. You know, they're in one button group. And again, if I go over here, I should see, here's my buttons block with inside it 2 buttons. So again, this is the relationship between the list view and showing kind of how these things work. And I'll tell you, the list view is a great way. If you've all of a sudden you're looking at something, you go, I don't know how that works. Say you wanted to see this block pattern. You go, well, what did they do? And that block pattern consists of, well, it's a cover block with an image inside it. Very, very simple. There's one cover block, that's the background image, with one image that's put inside it, that's half the size, and it's to the left of that content. Probably picked one of the simplest ones that you can find. And as far as the social media one, the tag, I don't think we need to talk about tag cloud unless somebody wants to. And the social media icons, other than the fact that I'm not sure if everybody knows it's a thing, there's a neat way of putting social icons in here where you say, you know, you go, okay, I want to put my WordPress and my Twitter and my, again, this is a group, in effect, a group block. It's a social media specific group block. And these are new blocks I'm adding inside it. And the interaction is pretty straightforward on how to do that. You know, and then to be able to go here and say, okay, my link is going to be whatever my Twitter handle is. I'm not going to put that in right now, but then being able to go to this group block and now again having additional ways of styling it. This has been added, but the first thing is knowing that this social icon block exists in the first place. There've been a lot of blocks that have been added. Ray is going to talk about some of the blocks for themes, but that's an example of, you know, a block and then the new styling that they keep kind of adding onto stuff. Ray, I probably cut into your time, but that was
that's good. I mean, mine, trust me, mine's the shorter ones.
Yeah.
So I don't forget, Peter, at the end of mine, someone asked to do a quick demo of going to the pattern repository on WordPress.org and paste that in. So we can do that at the end if that's okay.
Love to do it. Absolutely.
Okay. No, this was good. This was, I mean, we wanted to do this as the meat of, because this is the thing I think people are going to use the most or will see the most. Full site editing.
I know we're doing things faster than we always say, but you know, there is an experiment. Give it a try. Open up, create a new page that is just an experiment. That's all I do. Yeah. That's how I figure out what's there, and just drop an image there and then start playing with the controls and see what it does.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't start messing with existing pages or.
Yeah, exactly. Create or go to InstaWP and create a temporary site to play with.
All right. I'm going to grab the screen back if that's okay. Peter. Let me do that.
Yep.
Sure. All right. So that was, yeah. And like I said, that was fine that we spent most of the time on that, because I think, as you'll see in a second, as we alluded to previously, full site editing, I think at this point for most people it's good to know, but I would really be surprised, and put it in the chat if anyone's actually using full site editing on their sites. I'd love to hear your experiences on that. So again, a quick recap if you're kind of new to WordPress. So what is full site editing? It's, as I mentioned earlier, this block editor or Gutenberg originally started off as just being an editor for pages and posts. Eventually, with I forget WordPress 5.8 or something, it extended into widgets. So the widget area, suddenly you could edit with Gutenberg or with a block editor. The idea behind full site editing is now, in theory, it should be able to edit other parts of your website, like your headers and footers and templates and things like that, using a block editor. So that was, you know, it's been in this beta mode in WordPress since I think 5.9 was the first time they really rolled it out. So there've been some, I'll talk about the updates to it shortly. So anyway, the long-term vision of it, as we saw on that roadmap, is it replaces, you know, all these things that today you would do through a customizer or menus or widgets, all these other things. So it's, again, letting you edit everything in your theme with blocks. So when we talked about this before, what's the impact for you today? Probably nothing. There probably is no impact. So, and it's primarily because themes need to support full site editing. And there's some modern themes like Cadence, for example, that already allow some full site editing. But in terms of, just to show this real quick, if you go to themes, let's say you want to add a new theme today, they do have this option for you to be able to search by features. And one of those features is full site editing. And as Peter, I think, alluded to too, there's not a lot here. And to be honest, I'm not sure I would use some of these themes because
Right.
you look at these back to our other previous advice. I mean, Gutenfi store, there's nobody using it. There's no reviews on this. Not to say it's a bad theme or it's not safe, but in general, rule of thumb is you want something that has a track record. So there's not a lot of them out there besides the the one that's included with WordPress. So the WordPress 2022 theme is the main one. That's a block editor theme. And again, if you're using a theme like Cadence, Astra, or using Elementor, etc., a lot of those already have features in place that let you do what full site editing allows you to do. And as I said, even older themes, you can do similar things through the customizer. So again, what's the big deal? Why is full site editing kind of the buzzword in WordPress 6 and previous versions? Because in the future, the thought is just as this block editor Gutenberg has evolved over a couple of years, it took it a while to get to where it is today. Ideally, this full site editing is something that over time is going to standardize the experience of editing things like headers and footers. I mean, today it's kind of a pain. And going back to the history of WordPress in the past, you would have to be a developer, and go in there and change templates and know PHP code and all that. So it was not very simple to edit other parts of your site besides posts and pages. So again, the thought is by building this functionality into WordPress core, you don't need a paid theme to do what full site editing will let you do. And again, the last bullet point is it's a bit rough right now. It should, just like Gutenberg, I'm expecting it's going to get better over time. But for beginners, even intermediate people, it's a bit overwhelming, and the user experience for full site editing today, I would say, it's not the greatest. So again, use with caution, be aware of it, but probably not something most people are going to use immediately. So what changed in 6.0? Some of the big changes are global style switching. I'll show you an example of that. Exporting your block theme, this is kind of an interesting one. I'll show a quick demo of that. Some new theme blocks and then more template options. So let's cover these kind of quickly. Again, there's probably not a lot here that people will jump into and try. So global style switching, people may not have noticed this because again, if you're not using a block theme, you probably wouldn't see this. But in WordPress 5.9, you did have the ability at a site level. So if you think about themes like Cadence, for example, already has something similar where you can set a global palette of colors for your entire website. And in general, if you're building a new site, that's a good practice. You can set the typography, the fonts and everything at a site level, and then you could override it if you need to in pages or blocks. So there was some ability to do that in WordPress 5.9, but you're only really able to do one style across your theme. What global style switching is doing is, again, this only works for block themes, is theme authors now can include a selection of styles that you can switch between and kind of quickly see some immediate changes to the look and feel of your site. So just jump into the example for a second, and I'll show this live in a demo. But the way this works is when you're in the full site editing editor, you click on this little half moon. I'll show this, and you can switch between different themes. Different styles, and kind of quickly see what they look like. So again, this is really up to theme authors to do this or to prepackage it. And because there's not a lot of block themes, you're probably not going to see a lot of these. Again, think forward to the future. What's neat is you can change them on the fly. It's kind of like, I've heard this analogy, but it's like having a ready-to-use child theme. That analogy falls apart a little bit because child themes actually generally have a lot more than just styling in them. They have functionality, etc. And the way it works, if you're interested on the nitty-gritty, is if you look at the way under your website, under your theme folder, there's a new /styles subfolder, and that's where these individual style files will live. And here's kind of what they look like, just to show you a quick example. So for the 2022 theme, if you looked at it on your web host, or if you're running this locally, There's a new folder there called styles. The 2022 theme has 3 styles: blue, pink, and Swiss. So again, in these examples, it's just simply changing colors. So colors are changing to red and white, etc. And maybe it's a lot easier if I just show you what that looks like. So let's do a quick demo. Again, this is probably not something a lot of people are going to use that often. So where you get to this, and I'm on WordPress 6.0. I did not update to release candidate 4. Like Peter, I'm still on 3. I didn't know they did RC4. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm surprised. So again, and the theme I'm using, just a reminder, this only works for block themes. So I'm using the 2022 theme. I go in the editor. So first thing is the editor comes up. So here's style switching. Immediately, you get the little half moon, and by default, the 2022 theme is using this, this style. So this typography. What's kind of neat too is back we talked about, Peter showed it earlier about this idea of previewing. So this preview kind of shows you, here's what my typography will look like, here's my color palette, etc. With this theme, they've included these 3 other styles, so blue, pink, and then Swiss. So just to get a quick preview, if I switch to the Swiss style, you can see it's changed the colors a bit. I switched to pink. It's kind of a little garish there, but that's what it looks like. This is what blue looks like. So, again, is it, and at this point, I haven't saved it or applied it, so I'm looking at it. So reality check, what does this mean? It really depends on what theme authors are going to do with this going forward. Because you think about it, our theme author is going to spend a lot of time designing these different kind of palettes or style palettes you can switch between. Maybe, it remains to be seen how useful this really will be. From an end user standpoint, it's kind of neat. It's a quick way for you to make an immediate change to the style of your site at a global level. So anyway, that's global styles in a nutshell. All right, the other, again, the full site editing, the other one that's probably of interest to people is kind of in an order that you may use is the ability to actually export your block theme or all your theme settings, I should say. But right now, again, it only works for block themes. So where this would make sense is, let's say you've made a lot of modifications to styling. Let's say you've created some new templates for your theme. Let's say you've adjusted the header, et cetera, et cetera. And in some ways, you've almost created a theme in a child's theme that's it's customized. But let's say you want to use it on another project, you want to use it on another website, et cetera, or you want to move on a staging environment. So what you can do now with WordPress 6.0 is you can export your entire theme as a zip file. So it includes all those edits you've made. And it's really a theme file. So that zip file, you can download it and then import it just like you would any other theme that you've purchased or downloaded someplace, the normal way under appearance themes. So again, I'll show this real quick, but there's not a lot to it. You click on these 3 dots, you export it as a zip file to your computer. And at that point, you just upload it wherever you want. You upload it to a local site or a remote site. So let me just show you real quick where that is. So here, oops, get out of styles, go back to here. Let me go back to the beginning, back to the site. So over here we go. Export. Exports your theme with updated templates and styles as a zip file. So again, it depending on the size of the theme, depending on the changes you've made, that'll dictate the size of this file. But it's a regular zip file that, like I said, once you're done with it, you wouldn't obviously do it on the same site, but you would go to another website, discard the changes. And the way you would use it is you'd go to appearance themes and then add new and then upload it. So anyway, it's something that's kind of in between. You think about today, it's a bit of a pain of transferring content. So in this case, it's not the same as doing a backup and a restore. It's just saying, here's the theme itself. You're basically getting a fresh theme that you can use on another website someplace. So that's exporting your block theme. A couple quick ones. These I probably won't do demos unless there's a real question for it. Some new blocks. So this has been around since WordPress 5.8, I believe, maybe 5.9. These idea of theme blocks. Let me just show you these real quick where they are. So if I'm in a page, let's say I'm in a page somewhere. Let me open up one existing. Most people probably don't use these that often. I think we did a quick demo on it before when we talked about full site editing. So if you look at underneath your blocks, there's a whole set of blocks here that are theme specific. So like navigation, site logo, query loop, etc. So the new ones they've added are the following. So they've added a comments query block, query loop, sorry, a read more block, no results, post author, etc. So just again, the comments query loop. So probably only makes sense, obviously, if you're building a page for a blog. So you want to somewhere, just like you have a query loop block where you can show all the blog posts. In this case, you can also include in there a comments list and style those. So, let's say for every comment, you want to include the comment author, the comment content avatar, et cetera, et cetera. So again, maybe of some value to people, especially from a blogging standpoint. It gives you more control over what you can show there. The other one, read more. This one only makes sense, again, inside of a query loop block. So the idea behind the query loop block is, let's say I'm showing all the posts for a category or something. Well, the read more allows you to do things like, create a new button to say read more. So you can show just a snippet, and then read more will bring you into the detail of it itself. So you can style it, and that's the big change here. Before, I think you could just do it as a link. So it's only intended to be used inside the query loop block. No results in query loop, another one that, again, probably you won't use unless you're using this query loop block. So this is, if you're displaying a loop of, let's say, post archives, if there aren't any for whatever the query is, it'll just display no results found. So not very exciting, and not a lot of styling to that one either. These, I'll show just one example of them. These are the new template types. So again, unless you're using a block editor theme, but let me show you back on WordPress 5.9. This is another demo site. If you're using the full site editing, as I said, you can create templates for your site. So for example, let me go back to the navigation here. So underneath templates, so this is the 2022 theme. It already has templates for you for like a 404 page, single post, etc. And all it allowed you to create in the past was add new. This was the only choice available for you, a front page template. Well, with 6.0 now, if I go back to editor, you now have the ability under templates to create at least these 4 new ones. So I can create an author template, a date template, a tag template, and a taxonomy template. So I'll show you one example of these, and this is the category template. So this was one that I had created. So here's the idea of what a template is. So this template, it's a category template. It will replace the default category archive page. And just to show you, I think I put a couple things in here. So here's a query loop. It's a post template. If you want to see how we create these, go back to one of our previous presentations we did on full site editing. But I'll show you kind of what this looks like in action. Sorry, I know I'm going kind of quick on these, but if I look at posts, here's my category post. So I created a couple sample posts called news, and that's what it looks like with data filled in. So that's what a template looks like. So that's the new template types. So you can create author ones, category, date, tag, taxonomy, etc. And that was my demo too. So full site editing, I know it was a whirlwind. I know it was just 15 minutes, but I think I'm not dismissing, and I've said this before, I'm not dismissing the potential for full site editing, but I really think where we are at this point, I don't think full site editing is probably something the vast majority of people are going to use. I think it's exciting to get into the hands of theme developers and have people at least start dipping your toes into it. But for the most part, I think for most people, it's probably just it's being aware of what's going on, but not something I think most people are going to spend that much time playing around with. Did we get any comments in the chat, Peter, about either questions?
Yeah, well, there was a question about the read more, which you then talked about, and then specifically about styling the text of the read more, which I answered that while I haven't done it. I did see it recently demoed on one of the many demos there. So I do know that you've got.
You can, you can change. So the
Control.
read more, you can create basically a button out of it, and you can create borders and padding, etc. around it. So
yeah, the challenge here is to say basically for somebody who's using the full site editor and they say, I want to have a lot of control about what a blog post looks like, and I want to really design it with my avatars and my read mores and things like that. This is where you would do it. Go into the template, and then you use all of these specific theme blocks that you then design and style. It used to be you'd go into PHP and you put in HTML and CSS, and also the barrier is reduced. Sue had mentioned again, is it ready? And we say it isn't, and in fact,
it isn't for two. I would say it's probably not ready for two reasons. First off, because it's not available for most of the popular themes out there. Like I said, if you're looking specifically for a block-enabled theme, there aren't any. Well, I shouldn't say there's some out there, but there's none that I personally would recommend. I mean, unless you have something really, really simple, like let's say you're just doing a blog, a personal blog, there's no reason you can't use the 2022 theme. I mean, it's fine, you know, for something simple like that. So that's it in terms of support. It requires a block theme. And then the second part of it is just like we've been seeing with Gutenberg with the list view, all the things that Peter was showing earlier. Personally, I think this user interface for site editing, I mean, there's a reason I still keep calling it beta. To me, this is not a great experience right now. It's going to take them a while, I think, to make it a good experience, because again, for somebody like me who's come from a page builder background of Divi, and even now though doing it from Cadence, there's a lot of experience, I think, that those people, you know, those paid themes have learned, and they've really built some slick features into there, like searching for templates, making templates reusable, the ability to really fine grain. I built a site recently with Cadence where I could really fine grain that, yeah, I just want this one template part to apply only to this custom post type, only to this, you know, archive loop. I don't know how you would do that with this current, you know, full site editor. So I just don't think that this experience, and this really sticks out like a sore thumb right now. Like, this looks very different than the rest of WordPress. So those two things.
Yeah, there is definitely a bit of a mixed message. If you go back and, you know, I've been at the different podcasts and conversations and all, it's really meant to be almost like counter the way the Gutenberg block editor kind of landed on our lap. That full site editing was meant to be introduced in a way that the theme developers could really go in and spend time and figure it out and provide feedback and all. And then it's the default theme for a new install. And there's a lot of work put into really talking about it, but I'm like, but you're talking to, in my opinion, a very small group. And the fact that on a default install, one of the first things you're seeing on the left side says beta.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I don't mean to be a negative
Nelly.
Nelly. I was gonna say, is there a more generic name? But yeah, I think that's.
I think it's one of those things, like we talk, again, this is to everyone else. I mean, Peter and I talk about this whenever this full site editing comes up in releases, and it'll still come up. I mean, we'll always mention it, we'll always give you updates on it, but we probably, just like today, I don't think we're gonna spend a heck of a lot of time on it until it reaches some point where there's like oh, that's compelling, now I want to jump in. I don't think it's reached that point yet.
Yeah.
Some other just, you know, so quick ones too, other enhancements. These are ones to be honest, I didn't do a lot of research on them, but I know there's some accessibility improvements that are included with 6.0.
Yeah.
Do you know any more about this one, Peter?
I know a lot of work went into it. I know a couple of people that were specifically involved, Joel Dolson and Alex Stein. There's a major accessibility kind of focus by some key people who are kind of pushing the entire development team, and they did. So they're looking at a lot of things that don't sound like anything, but if you're using a screen reader or whatever, and having things go in the right place or labeled the right way and all, it's a lot of that type of stuff. There is a post out there that I can share that goes through the very specific things of accessibility. But
yeah, and I know there were several, but the one example I just called out, because this might be something that, again, just to be aware of, but and I think this is by default now, that the post title will be used as the alt text for featured images.
Yeah.
Again, this might be something that hopefully your post title matches your featured image in some way.
Yeah, that's,
or it's a good reminder to make sure you add alt text to your featured image. So
yeah.
and the only other one is, again, probably geeky under the behind the scenes thing, but Web Fonts API. So, and I believe this might be only for block editor based themes as well, because it's in that theme.json. You can register web fonts there. So it's just a more efficient way to basically load fonts for some themes. And then, like we said, I know that there's a bunch of other bug fixes in there going back to, what did we say in the beginning? How many are there altogether? There's a couple hundred or so. I don't even have the slide up. So, questions came up earlier, and this is just the resources slide. Some questions came up in the chat earlier, Peter, while you were presenting too, about people saying, hey, should I turn off automatic updates on my site? Kind of what's, is it safe basically to let this thing update? I would just say, and I'll let you chime in, Peter. I would say, again, tonight, if you can, if you're not sure of your site being automatically backed up, it's probably a good idea to run a backup on it. I mean, so far, I haven't seen anything really major in here, like the Gutenberg thing or the widgets thing that happened in 5.9. In some ways, I think that was a bigger change than what I've seen so far in 6.0. So I'm not all that concerned about it. But again, famous last words, maybe.
Yeah, I haven't seen any major issues, and yeah, I think there's going to be some theme things where all of a sudden something is just like missing more than broken, for example. And the automatic updates, and I'm going to admit to not being, if you have things set, is it the point versions versus the major versions? Some things happen, or security versions happen automatically.
Yeah,
so,
I think you can be granular too about those. And some, again, it depends on, the problem is it depends on your website hosting. Some websites hosting, I mean, you have some ability to control that. Some of them, if you're on managed hosting in particular, you really don't have a lot of control. So
you want me to do a quick block
do you want to
pattern?
show that? I know if he's still on it, Frank was just saying that it's a good suggestion. So patterns, which we talked about, I think we showed this before, but it's a good one to show people. While you're looking for that, my one negative Nelly about the pattern so far is I really wish that again, I love the democracy of WordPress, don't get me wrong, it's why we're all here, but there's got to be some curation of these patterns. The ones I've seen, unfortunately, there's like 10 of them that to me seem the same thing. It's like, how many do we need of, the 2-column image with text next to it?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. There is curation, but you still have that challenge where if so say I'm creating a new page. Now, one thing I could do is I reactivated Cadence on our demo site, and when I'm looking at this now, I'm going to see a different set of block patterns to some degree than what I saw before. I think some of them look familiar, but the specific one we were talking about was
you were saying about going to the WordPress.org pattern repository, and
exactly. So you go to WordPress.org, and across the top, this has been relatively changed, and now we've got something, an area called patterns, and in the patterns, you can scroll through. You can also search by buttons, columns, featured, gallery. I mean, say you're doing your new photo site, and you want to filter your galleries. You can scroll through them, and then, I don't know, say you like this one. All you have to do, if you're logged in, and I recommend that when you go to WordPress.org that you actually create an account if you don't already have one, because you could start like favoriting plugins, and you could actually then easily call them up. You could favorite things like, in this case, block patterns. I could, if I really like that, I could heart it. All I have to do is copy it, come back to my page, come back to my new page, and paste it. And now that block pattern that I pulled off of here is now on my site with demo content. And now I can go in and I can change, say I want to change, all this to our own images, and I want to change this headline and my read more link and all. And then I can go say, I want to put in something else. I think one of the challenges is I want to see these things labeled in terms of families, so you can see, block patterns that will work well together, and themes like Cadence and Astra and I think Generate Press, they're doing that. They're including patterns that have been designed together, or
the wireframes.
The wireframe.
I kind of like I mean, that would be ideal, but I know a lot of people can't think that way. Like, you need an image sometimes.
Exactly.
But yeah, me personally, I'd love to have a wireframe pattern a little bit more, where it's just like it's basically a block of text or something, or like just a shade color. Does it convert typography? I don't think it inherits. No. Does it convert your typography to your site style, or does it bring its own fonts and colors? That's what Frank asked. From what I thought I saw, I could be wrong. I thought it does not inherit.
Yeah, it will inherit fonts. The size and all are. I don't think it'll inherit if you have an H2 of a certain size, but it should. I say that
okay.
You know what? I think it's just simply based on how the block pattern is put together.
Yeah.
But
even Cadence, though, to be honest, if you use the Cadence design library thing, and they're not very consistent, so you have to go through and adjust them. Like each of those reusable sections in Cadence, some of them could have an H2 is like 30 pixels, and the next one has it as something different. So I
think the thing that's going to make the biggest impact is when you can go to look at, instead of years ago when you would go to theme forest and you would go and find, oh, that theme looks just like, it's going to be a block pattern theming where you're going to get a block package where all the back patterns work well together and play nicely with your theme. That to me is going to be what themes ultimately become, in my opinion. I can coming here, even on the same page, copy the block pattern, paste it.
And just a reminder to folks who are seeing this for the first time, so block patterns are actually something that's available right now. That's been since WordPress at least 5.9 or so. So that's not 6.0 isn't changing that.
Yeah, exactly. And then this is again, if you go to the list view, you can see, and list view is nice. It opens up with everything collapsed or compacted or contracted. Yeah. And then you can see all the things that were in there. There's columns, and then in those columns, you've got more content. So if this was all opened up, you can see how big this gets. But this is where the block pattern is. This top one has all of these things in it. And this one has a column, and then each column has an image, a paragraph, and social icons. That's what you're seeing here. So it's all pre-designed. You can easily do this yourself. But if you find this and I'm going to change the image, and now I'm going to left, now you can manipulate it. Left justify, because I don't like centered content, text, things like that. You have a lot of control. Now, one thing I forgot in Cadence, the design library, that's where their patterns, they package them as the design library.
Right.
And now you can go and, say I want, that kind of thing, where it's a section. So they have their own way. So I stacked one pattern from .org, a second pattern .org, and then in Cadence under the design library, instead of putting them in patterns, which I think they should, but they call it a design library, which is just block patterns.
Right.
But you could see how you could start stacking, their design library should be, I would think, a little bit more, but not really, a little bit more consistent.
No, there's this all over the place.
Well, what they're doing is they have starter sites that have
Yeah.
now taken all these sections, these in effect, block patterns, put them together as fully composed pages, but then they're allowing you to pick from any of them. That's why, you can see there's some consistency because you can pick.
So Peter, I know we're at the top of the hour. So again, just parting thoughts. We'd love to. So we'll send out the recording to everyone, as well as all the links and the presentation slides. We'll also send out information about how to find us on the Facebook page, or sorry, Facebook group, and also on YouTube. We love to hear everyone's experiences. So definitely, if you're not a member of our Facebook group, please join. We'd love to hear how it's going, with WordPress 6.0. If you do have any issues or not, I mean, we have a good group of people on there. Very happy to jump in and help out if you're facing any issues. We can help each other out. So again, thanks everyone for joining tonight.
Thank you. All feedback is welcome. We want to
share ideas too. Share other topics with us. We'd love to hear other things you want to hear.
let us know if we went way too long. I don't know. There's a lot here that we went. So
yeah.
All right. For those who stuck out with it, stuck it out to the end.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.